Hey there, welcome back to the channel. Have you ever sat staring at your phone, debating whether to send that message to someone who once meant the world to you? It's that aching hesitation, the what-ifs that seem to take over your mind. What if they don't reply? What if they've moved on? Or worse, what if they respond, but it's not what you hoped for? This fear of rejection isn't just a passing thought. It's a deeply human experience that touches something vulnerable within us all. Rejection is powerful because it mirrors our insecurities, amplifying the doubts we already carry about our worth and place in someone else's life. As the Stoic philosopher Seneca once said, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." It's often not the rejection itself that wounds us the most, but the torment of anticipating it. The fear of reaching out to someone, especially an ex, is like standing at the edge of a cliff, unsure if the jump will lead to connection or heartbreak. But why does this fear hold us hostage so intensely? Relationships shape a significant part of our identity. When they end, they leave a void, a space that was once filled with shared moments, mutual understanding, and emotional intimacy. This void doesn't just represent the loss of another person, it's also a confrontation with our own unmet needs and unspoken fears. Think about it. The vulnerability of reaching out is not just about them, it's about you. It's about the courage it takes to say, "I care about this person," knowing there's a risk they might not feel the same way anymore. That vulnerability, though terrifying, is also where our greatest strength lies. Because if you're willing to confront that fear, if you're willing to step into the unknown, you reclaim your power from the grip of self-doubt. I want you to picture this. Instead of being paralyzed by fear, imagine feeling calm and canted, regardless of the outcome. Imagine seeing their response, or lack of it, not as a reflection of your worth, but simply as part of their journey, separate from yours. This is the mindset we'll build today. In this video, I'll guide you through why this fear arises, how to challenge the mental stories that fuel it, and the practical steps you can take to approach this situation with grace and confidence. Whether or not you choose to reach out, my goal is to help you reconnect with your inner strength and find peace in your decision. So stay with me, because by the end of this video, you'll have the tools not only to face your fears, but to rise above them with clarity and self-respect. Let's begin. Number 1, the root of fear. Why do we feel such overwhelming fear after a relationship ends? The answer lies in how deeply relationships are wired into our psychology. Human connections are not just emotional, they are primal. They form the foundation of our sense of safety, belonging, and identity. When a relationship breaks down, it's as if that foundation crumbles, leaving behind an emptiness that feels almost unbearable. This fear begins in the mind, particularly in the amygdala, the part of the brain responsible for processing fear and anxiety. According to attachment theory, humans are naturally inclined to form emotional bonds. These bonds give us a sense of security. When they are severed, the brain interprets this loss as a threat, activating the body's fight or flight response. It's why you may feel a tightness in your chest, a lump in your throat, or even physical restlessness when thinking about reaching out to someone who has become emotionally distant. But this fear isn't just about the other person. It's also about what the loss signifies to you personally. Relationships often mirror our self-esteem. When someone leaves or becomes unavailable, it can stir doubts about our own worth, making us question if we are lovable or valuable enough. This is the deeper wound, the fear of being unworthy of connection. The Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius reminds us, If you are pained by an external thing, it is not this thing that disturbs you, but your judgment about it. And it is in your power to wipe out this judgment now. What does this mean in the context of fear? It means the fear of rejection doesn't come from the potential act of being ignored. It comes from the story we tell ourselves about what that rejection means. At its core, this fear is a primal response. Our ancestors relied on social bonds for survival. To be rejected or excluded from the group could mean danger, even death. Although we no longer live in caves, our brains haven't fully evolved beyond this mechanism. This is why the idea of someone we care about pulling away feels so distressing. It awakens that ancient survival instinct. To overcome this fear, we must first recognize it for what it is, a protective mechanism, not a reflection of reality. The brain wants to shield us from potential pain, but in doing so, it often creates unnecessary suffering. When you understand that this fear is natural, but not always rational, you begin to regain control over it. The next step is to reframe rejection. Instead of seeing it as a blow to your worth, view it as information, a signal about the other person's capacity, readiness, or priorities, not about your value as a person. This shift in perspective not only reduces fear, but also empowers you to act from a place of self-respect. So as you stand at this crossroads, remember that fear is a visitor, not a permanent resident. Acknowledge its presence, but don't let it dictate your decisions. After all, the courage to face your fears is what truly sets you free. Number 2, the first step to overcoming fear. What is the first step to overcoming the fear of rejection? It begins with something deceptively simple, acknowledging your emotions instead of suppressing them. Fear thrives in silence. When you try to deny or push it away, it only grows stronger, taking deeper root in your thoughts and actions. But when you give yourself permission to feel it, you take the first step toward dismantling its power. Think about this. When you're afraid of reaching out to someone, what's really happening? Beneath the hesitation is often a conflict between your desire to reconnect and the fear of vulnerability. You might tell yourself, "I shouldn't feel this way," or "I need to be stronger." But suppressing your emotions doesn't make you stronger. It builds a wall between you and your authentic self. Psychologists agree that emotional acknowledgement is the foundation of healing. By saying, "I feel scared," and "that's okay," you break the cycle of shame that often accompanies fear. Imagine standing at the edge of a pool, hesitant to jump in. The water seems cold and your body resists. But once you take that first step, dipping a toe in, you realize it's not as overwhelming as you thought. Overcoming fear works the same way. You don't have to dive head first. A small, thoughtful action can be enough to begin. This can start with something as simple as crafting a message. A text like, "Hey, how have you been?" may seem insignificant, but it carries profound meaning. It's not just a question, it's a gesture of courage and an acknowledgement of your feelings. I call this the first step of love, because it's not just about the person you're reaching out to, it's also about loving yourself enough to honor your emotions. But before you send that message, it's important to calm your mind. Neuroscience shows that anxiety can be physically overwhelming, causing your heart rate to increase and your thoughts to spiral. A powerful tool to combat this is mindful breathing. When you feel the anxiety rising, pause. Close your eyes, take a deep breath in through your nose, hold it for a moment, and then slowly exhale through your mouth. Repeat this several times. Deep breathing signals your brain that you are safe, reducing the intensity of fear and making you feel more grounded. This step is not about guaranteeing a specific outcome. It's about reclaiming your power. Whether or not the other person responds is secondary. What truly matters is that you've taken action, breaking free from the paralysis of fear. As Maya Angelou wisely said, courage is the most important of all the virtues, because without courage, you can't practice any other virtue consistently. The courage to acknowledge your fear, take a breath, and extend a small olive branch. These are acts of self-love and resilience. So, as you prepare to take that first step, remind yourself, it's not about being fearless, it's about acting despite the fear. Each step you take strengthens your confidence and brings you closer to the clarity and peace you deserve. Number 3, building confidence and taking brave steps. The fear of rejection often stems from a deeper root, a lack of self-confidence. Confidence is the foundation that helps us face our fears and take action. Without it, even the simplest task, like sending a text, can feel monumental. But here's the good news. Confidence isn't something you're born with. It's a skill you can build. At a biological level, confidence involves the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for decision-making and rational thought. When this part of your brain is active and healthy, it helps you process situations logically rather than emotionally. This is crucial because fear often comes from overthinking and imagining the worst-case scenario. By strengthening your confidence, you can quiet those negative voices and focus on the reality of the situation. But how do you build this confidence? It begins with breaking free from the cycle of negative thought patterns. If you've ever caught yourself thinking, "They'll never respond," or "I'm not good enough," you're creating a mental trap. Psychologists refer to this as a fear condition. Your brain starts to associate reaching out with rejection, making the fear even harder to overcome. To break this cycle, you must actively challenge these thoughts. Instead of saying, "They won't accept me," reframe it as, "Whether they respond or not, I'm still worthy of love and respect." This isn't just about words, it's about rewiring your brain. When you practice positive self-talk consistently, your brain begins to adopt these new patterns as truth. Over time, this will naturally build your self-confidence, making fears like rejection less paralyzing. Remember, confidence also comes from self-awareness. Take a moment to reflect on your strengths and weaknesses. What do you bring to the table in a relationship? Maybe you're a great listener, or you have a kind and supportive nature. Acknowledging your positive traits reminds you that your worth isn't defined by someone else's reaction. Psychologist Dr. Courtney Stein wisely said, "Past failures should not define your future." Think about this. Even if your ex didn't value your feelings in the past, that doesn't diminish your value as a person. Your self-worth isn't tied to their actions or opinions. It's something only you control. When you internalize this truth, you empower yourself to act without fear of rejection. Building confidence also involves taking small, brave steps. You don't need to conquer your fears overnight. Start with manageable actions, like journaling your thoughts or sharing your feelings with a trusted friend. Each small step you take reinforces the idea that you are capable, resilient, and worthy of taking up space. As Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Your ex's response is beyond your control, but how you approach the situation is entirely up to you. When you focus on what you can control, your mindset, your emotions, and your actions, you reclaim your power. So as you stand on the edge of this decision, remind yourself that bravery isn't the absence of fear. It's taking action despite it. With every brave step, you're not just moving toward your ex, you're moving toward a stronger, more confident version of yourself. Number 4. How to approach rebuilding the relationship. Reaching out after a relationship has ended can feel like stepping into uncharted territory, especially if the relationship left emotional scars. Whether it ended in a painful argument, mutual confusion, or simply faded over time, those unresolved feelings can make rebuilding seem impossible. But here's the truth. Every relationship, no matter how broken, offers an opportunity for growth, understanding, and even reconciliation if both parties are willing. The first thing to acknowledge is that scars don't define the future of the relationship. They reflect the lessons of the past. If you're considering rebuilding, it's important to understand that this process isn't about ignoring those scars, but embracing them as part of the story. Healing doesn't mean pretending the pain didn't exist. It means addressing it with honesty and compassion. To begin, ask yourself one essential question. Is this a healthy decision for me? Rebuilding a relationship should never come at the cost of your well-being or self-respect. If you're reaching out because you genuinely value the connection and see potential for mutual growth, then it's worth exploring. However, if fear, loneliness, or guilt are driving your decision, pause. Take time to reflect on whether this is truly the right path for you. If you decide to move forward, remember that rebuilding is a gradual process. Relationships aren't restored in a single conversation. They're rebuilt through a series of small, meaningful steps. Start with a simple message, something that opens the door without overwhelming either party. A neutral approach like, "I've been thinking about how things ended and wanted to check in. How have you been?" shows genuine interest while keeping the tone light and respectful. As you navigate these first steps, pay close attention to their response. Are they open and receptive, or hesitant and guarded? Their reaction will give you valuable insight into whether they're also ready to rebuild. This isn't about pressuring them. It's about understanding where they stand so you can move forward with clarity. Creating psychological security, both for yourself and for them, is essential. This means approaching the process with patience, emotional stability, and a clear understanding of your boundaries. Don't rush to repair every aspect of the relationship at once. Instead, focus on rebuilding trust and emotional connection, one conversation at a time. Remember, consistency is more important than intensity. Rebuilding also requires a willingness to let go of the need for control. You can't dictate how they'll respond or force them to match your efforts. But you can control your own actions and mindset. By maintaining your composure, expressing your feelings authentically, and respecting their pace, you create an environment where rebuilding feels safe and natural for both of you. As Seneca wisely said, "Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end." This is your chance to approach the relationship with fresh eyes, unburdened by past mistakes. Whether the relationship evolves into something new or ultimately fades, you'll know you've given it your best with grace and courage. Ultimately, rebuilding a relationship isn't about returning to what once was. It's about creating something better. With patience, authenticity, and emotional clarity, you can take the first steps toward a connection that feels stronger, healthier, and more aligned with who you are now. Number 5. Patience and time in rebuilding the relationship. Rebuilding a relationship takes more than effort. It takes patience, time, and a willingness to embrace the process rather than rush it. You might catch yourself wondering, how do we get back to where we were? Or, Will things ever feel the same again? These questions are natural, but they stem from the desire for immediate resolution, which can lead to disappointment. Relationships, much like trust, are fragile threads that must be rewoven slowly and deliberately. The first thing to remember is that time is not your enemy, it's your ally. Emotional wounds don't heal overnight. The brain, influenced by the pain of past conflicts or misunderstandings, needs time to process and release those emotions. Scientifically speaking, rebuilding a relationship means re-establishing the emotional and psychological bonds that were once shared. This requires both individuals to feel safe, understood, and valued, a process that simply cannot be rushed. When you reach out, start small. A simple, heartfelt message or gesture can begin the journey of mending broken bridges. It's tempting to want everything to fall back into place immediately, but forcing it can often do more harm than good. Relationships, like seeds, need consistent care to grow. Water them too aggressively, and they might drown. Instead, approach each interaction with gentle intent, letting trust and understanding develop at their own pace. Psychologically, your behavior during this period is crucial. Dr. Gary Williams, a psychologist specializing in relationship dynamics, emphasizes time and patience are the most critical elements in rebuilding relationships. Rushing the process often leads to a repeat of past mistakes. By allowing space for trust and emotional security to grow naturally, you create a foundation for a more meaningful connection. Patience doesn't mean inactivity, though. It means showing up consistently in small, meaningful ways. Demonstrate that you're serious about rebuilding, not just with your words, but with your actions. If you promise to be more understanding, practice active listening. If you admitted to a past mistake, show through your behavior that you've learned and grown. Each small action builds the framework for a stronger relationship. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The blazing fire makes flames and brightness out of everything that is thrown into it." In the same way, the challenges and time invested in rebuilding can strengthen the bond you share. The process itself, though difficult, can transform your relationship into something even more resilient than before. It's also essential to let the other person set their own pace. Give them room to feel their emotions and process their experiences. This mutual patience not only fosters respect, but also ensures that the relationship is rebuilt on a foundation of equality and understanding. Remember, the goal isn't necessarily to return to the way things were. It's to create a connection that reflects the growth and learning you've both experienced. By embracing patience and honoring the passage of time, you allow the relationship to evolve into something deeper and more fulfilling. Number 6. Effective communication strategies for rebuilding. When reaching out to an ex, the way you communicate can make all the difference between rekindling a connection and pushing them further away. Communication is not just about what you say, but how you say it. Your approach, tone, and intention set the stage for what comes next. Simply pouring your heart out or reaching out impulsively without thought can lead to misunderstandings or even unintended hurt. A mindful and strategic approach rooted in emotional intelligence is essential. The first step is to carefully consider the tone of your message. It's easy to let emotions take over, especially when anxiety about the response looms large. But bombarding someone with emotional intensity, whether it's desperation, frustration, or longing, can create pressure and drive them away. Start small and neutral. A casual message like, "Hey, I was just thinking about you. How have you been?" is often more effective than a long emotional declaration. It gives the other person the space to respond without feeling overwhelmed. Psychologist Alice Walsh advises, when reaching out to an ex, avoid overwhelming them with your emotions. Let your words reflect calmness and respect for their emotional space. This doesn't mean hiding your feelings. It means presenting them in a measured, respectful way that invites dialogue rather than defensiveness. If you decide to take the conversation beyond messages and meet in person, your body language and tone are equally important. Approach the meeting with genuine empathy and openness. Begin by asking about their well-being. Questions like, "How have things been for you lately?" show that you're interested in their life without immediately delving into the past. This also establishes a sense of mutual respect, setting a positive tone for the interaction. One of the most common mistakes people make during such conversations is revisiting old conflicts or rehashing past issues. While it's tempting to seek closure or explain your perspective, these conversations often reopen wounds rather than mend them. Instead, shift the focus to the present and future. Discuss shared goals, ways to improve communication, or mutual expectations if you're exploring the possibility of rebuilding the relationship. This forward-looking approach creates hope and shows maturity. Be prepared to listen more than you speak. Effective communication isn't just about expressing your feelings. It's about understanding theirs. Give them the space to share their thoughts without interrupting or trying to justify your actions. Listening with empathy and validating their feelings builds trust and shows that you're serious about creating a healthier connection. As Maya Angelou once said, "People will forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel." When reaching out to your ex, focus on communication that fosters understanding and leaves a positive emotional impact. Remember, communication is not a one-time act. It's an ongoing process. Every message, gesture, and conversation builds on the last. Stay patient and let your actions consistently show that you're committed to fostering a meaningful connection. Number 7, resolution. When you feel hesitant to reach out to your ex, take a moment to ask yourself, what am I truly afraid of? Fear often stems from unresolved emotional wounds, whether from this relationship or earlier experiences. Perhaps it's the fear of rejection, the pain of failure, or even the uncertainty of reopening old emotions. These feelings, while valid, don't have to control your actions. Psychologically, this fear originates in your mind's attempt to protect you from further hurt. It's a defense mechanism. But as with all fears, acknowledging its presence is the first step toward resolution. Imagine yourself standing at a crossroads. One path is staying silent and letting fear dictate your actions, while the other is embracing courage to create clarity. As Carl Jung said, "What you resist persists." Facing these emotions head-on helps you dismantle the hold they have over you. If the fear feels overwhelming, you can use techniques like journaling or practicing mindfulness to untangle the thoughts fueling your anxiety. Writing down what you feel allows you to objectively analyze whether your assumptions, such as, "They'll never want to talk to me," are based on fact or fear. More often than not, these beliefs are projections of insecurity rather than truths. Once you've identified and reframed your fears, taking action becomes less daunting. Start small, like sending a simple, casual message such as, "Hey, I hope you're doing well." This doesn't just break the ice, but also shows maturity and confidence. Keep the tone light, avoiding any heavy emotional baggage or confrontational remarks. Remember, this is not about forcing a response or seeking validation. It's about opening the door for authentic communication. Approach this process with patience and respect for yourself and for them. Emotional resolution is rarely achieved in a single step. It's a gradual journey of creating understanding and rebuilding trust. Every small interaction should aim to establish emotional safety and mutual respect. Even if the outcome isn't what you hoped for, remember that you've taken a brave step in seeking clarity and growth. Ultimately, resolution isn't about getting the response you desire. It's about finding peace within yourself. You've faced your fears, made an effort, and taken control of your narrative. That alone is a victory. If today's video helped you in any way, please let me know in the comments. Share your experiences or any tips you've found helpful in overcoming this fear. Your thoughts and suggestions are valuable to me. If you've learned something new, don't forget to share this video with others who might benefit from it. I'll be back with more videos that can guide you through similar challenges. Thanks for watching, and remember, take brave steps to overcome your fears.